And he researches Jewish names in Zagreb, and indeed he's going to speak about first names of Zagreb Jews from the beginning of the 19th century until the Second World War. Please.
Okay, you have heard everything that's written here, so we can go on.
Microphone.
So, the first permanent...
Use the microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So the first permanent settlers in Zagreb came at the beginning of the 19th century from all parts, from different parts of the Austrian-Hungary Empire, and from some parts of Germany. And supposedly they have kept ties with those communities they came from. I suppose so. I don't have confirmation. But what happened is that after World War I, the borders changed. And all those ties, if they were there, were severed and broken. And new ties have to be made with other communities in the Yugoslavia, which are mostly Sephardic. Zagreb was an Ashkenazi community with an Italian Jewish minority. And one more thing, in the 19th century there was the Croatian national revival, as it was in whole Europe, and it was led by people with not very Croatian names, but they changed it. So we have Ludwig von Gaj, who became Ljudevit Gaj. We have Ignác Fuchs, who became Vatroslav Lisinski. We have Farkas Lajos, who became Ljudevit Vukotinović, and Ferdinand Wiesner, who became Ferdo Livonić. They all translated their names. So I was interested in, did the Jews do the same? Did they gradually change their names to more Slavic sounding, more Croatian sounding? And the second thing is, who did it first? Who did it most? Men or women? Usually women are the first to adopt names from the surroundings, but we shall see what's going on. So I analyzed two types of names. The Shem HaKodesh and the Kinui are called the civic name and Jewish name because the civic name is something that you find in all the documents, while Jewish name, the Shem HaKodesh, was just registered in some birth registries. My sources were three. The book of the history of the Jewish community written by Rabbi Schwartz, the registries of births, and the headstone inscriptions at Mirogoj Cemetery, at the Israelite section of the cemetery, which is also threefold, because you have inscriptions in Latin script, Croatian and German, in Hebrew script, and then you have a database that you can access online. And when you combine all those facts, you have 6,600 individuals, of which 4,097 individuals are those that I know first name, family name, and year of birth. Of course, there were problems. The first problem was that there was no fixed official first name. So you have persons that in various documents are listed under different names. Some are okay, recognizable, some less. Then you have, in the same entry of the birth registry, parents and children have different family names. One is Berg, and the other is Berger. And the third problem is the mistakes made when handwritten documents were transcribed into the database, because whoever transcribed it had no idea how to read cursive Gothic, Cicerlin, or cursive script. So we have something that we can recognize as mistakes, Bernhard and Calder's, but what is Faiga Pesla? It should be some family name, nobody knows. Okay. No, it's just a family, it's only registered there, so I don't know, I have no other information about the person. But, okay, tell me. I don't have time. So, among the civic names, so Kinui, among masculine names, 2 are the most popular. So these are the names which became from Yosef and Yaakov. Why? My hypothesis, business. Why? Because Croatia, Zagreb is a Catholic environment. So the names there are mostly New Testament names and names of saints. And both Joseph and Jacob can function both as Catholic names and Jewish names. So you can have a Jewish name and not stand out in a Catholic surrounding. Among women, there are not any names that stand out so much like those two. And we see that the most popular names are those that are popular internationally, like Rosa. Then first names which represent derivations of Hebrew names, like Anna and Elizabeth. And first names that represent derivations of male Hebrew names, like Johanna. And so I was looking into where did the name originate? In which language does it have some etymology? And here are the number of individuals bearing names deriving from certain languages. We can see that there are unknown names, unknown origins, that are usually pet names, hypochoristics, diminutives, something that can be anything. Not very much here, but when we eliminate those, then we see that among males, the most names are Germanic, then come Semitic, Latin, and Slavic. That's the hierarchy. Among women, the most often are the Latin ones, then come Germanic, Semitic, Romance, Slavic. So in both cases, Germanic names are somewhere on the top. And there is not much difference in the percentage of Slavic names in one and the other. But when I turn to individual forms of names, I don't talk about the number of individuals now, we see that among women, the number of unknown names of unknown origin, is much higher than among men. And when we eliminate that, we see the same hierarchy in masculine names: Semitic, Germanic, Latin, Slavic. Semitic names are here. Semitic name forms are more popular than Germanic name forms, and the feminine is Latin, Semitic, Germanic, Romance, Slavic. So it's the same group of names, but not in the same orders. There are a little bit more male Slavic names than female, but it's not a great difference. And then I looked into the diachronic frequency of those names among males, and the first Slavic masculine name appeared in 1859. It was Lavoslav, which is a folk translation of Leopold, Lav, lion. And in 1897, by the end of the graph, the Slavic names reached their maximum, 14 individuals bearing 9 different names. And I show the same thing in percentages. And in the last year that we have the data, Slavic names form 1/3 of all the names used, and that is the maximum, because Latin and Germanic have 20%, and Semitic and Greek names form the rest. Okay, with women, the first Slavic name appeared in 1864, 5 years after the male name, and it was Ljuba, which is Ahava. The maximum appeared in the same year 1897 with 11 individuals and 8 names. And in the last year that we have data for, there are more Latin names than Slavic names still among women. Among men, not. So this came as a little surprise, but I'll deal with etymologia proxima first and then try to make some conclusions. So etymologia proxima would be from which language was the name directly borrowed. And here we see a lot of unknown origins for feminine names, which is logical because Anna can come from Italian, German, Czech. You just say from any name. Adam, the same thing. So there are many more unknowns here than there were in the previous list. Okay. No, yes. Okay, so what we see here that there is no much difference between masculine and feminine names. About half of them are German, about 1/3 of them are Croatian, and the rest are smaller entities. And if you look at the name forms, we see individual name forms that the quantity of unknown names is enormous. It's more than 1/2 of all the names. In feminine names, even 2/3. And we should eliminate it because what we want to see is this. With masculine names, we have almost 1/2 of them Croatian, almost 1/4 of them German. With feminine, they are more or less equal, around 1/3 each. So again, there are more Croatian names among males than among females, which surprised me. Okay. The first Croatian masculine name appeared in 1825. This was Hinko. Hinko is the local variant of Heinrich. And in 1897, there were 17 Croatian name forms among those listed. And in the last year, 1898, 91.91% of all the names among males were Croatian, and the rest were Italian names, no more German. That was that Italian minority, Italian Jewish minority in Zagreb. Among women, the first Croatian feminine name, Judita, which is Yehudit, appeared in 1852, which is 27 years after the male one. And again, in 1897, it reached its maximum, and those maximum probably would go on and on and on. But the data for the 20th century is very scarce. That's the problem there. So the question is, how come that there are more Slavic names among males than among females, and how come that males adopted Slavic names and Croatian names before female? My hypothesis, business. Males were working with the outside world, outside of the community, and it was probably good for business to have a name that doesn't resonate like foreign. Women were not so much in contact with the outside world, so it wasn't so important for them to have some local name. And among women, in the last year, 78.57% of all the names were already Croatian. And now I would turn to Jewish names, the Shem HaKodesh. And in the top 10 of masculine names, which is, as you can see, have 11 names, the top 10, because the last two have the same name of birth. 10 of them are Hebrew, and only one, Leib, is Yiddish. Among female names, 6 of them are Hebrew, and 4 of them are Yiddish. So more Hebrew names among males, more Yiddish names among females, which is not surprising. It's something that I really expected. as we can see, the most masculine first names, 1/3 of them are Hebrew one. 1/5 of them are a combination of a Hebrew and Hebrew name. 17% are Yiddish, and 13% Hebrew plus Yiddish. So these are the categories. Among women, 2/3 of all the names are Yiddish, and only 13% Hebrew. So here the discrepancy is really, really big. When we look at the number of individuals bearing names, we see the discrepancy even more. More than 50% of males have Hebrew names, 40% of females have Hebrew names. Only 10% of males have Yiddish names, but more than 50% of females have Yiddish names. So it's something that I was expecting, because of the fact that in other researches the results are more or less the same when we come to Shemot HaKodesh. And then I also wanted to see the correlation about civic and Jewish names. So pairing of a certain civic name with a certain Jewish name, a certain kinui with a certain Shem HaKodesh, and find the most popular and see if they are, stable, are they declining, are they raising, what's happening. And I found among masculine pairs, there are many names in which one is the modification of other. Yosef, Yosef, for instance. Then there are many in which phonetic similarity is important. So it's the first sound, the first consonant, or several consonants in one and the other name that are similar. Of course, there are names based on Yaakov's and Moshe's blessings from the Tanakh, in which names are paired with the names of animals, which are then translated into Yiddish often. We have here Leopold and Leib, which also is representative of the last category of pairings, and that is folk etymology. I said already, Leopold has nothing to do with lions. It's lute, it's what in German it's Leute, folk, people, so it just sounds the same. Among feminine pairings, which are very, very, much rare, only Miriam and Maria have have a two-digit number of persons bearing them. The only thing that is important is the phonetic similarity. So, first letter, first sound, or several consonants in both names that are the same or similar. And then I wanted to see in time what's happening with the most popular, can you see? Most popular pairs. And you can see the black line with, in the combination Leopold and Leib is slowly declining. Okay, maybe it's losing on popularity. On Albert and Abraham, there is a steeper decline of the black line. So, okay, maybe, those pairings are not so fixed anymore as they were before. But then you come to Ignaz and Yitzhak, where you have two peaks, and I cannot see any decline. And in the end, Moshe, Moritz, Mauro, also it has two peaks and no visible decline. So I suppose they are rather stable. And then in the end, I have made the correlation of all the lions possible. And you can see that the black line is going up, not down. So I have no answer to the question, do those pairings, do they keep stable in time? Do they lose popularity? Do they gain popularity? I have no answer with this data. I need more data. Okay, what I have, and if someone has taken pictures of me talking here, please send me so that I can add it to my report when I go back home. And in the end,